How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation, and shocker, we got 3 news stories to talk about in today's video. The first thing I want to cover is that Sony is giving away 30 months of PS Plus Premium, and all you have to do to get it is play games. And then second, we're going to talk about how the PS5 itself, the base PS5, is quote-unquote more than capable of running PS3 games. It's up to Sony to do it. And third, the Game Awards was actually awesome this year, shockingly, so we're going to run through everything awesome that was announced. So let's jump into this first news story here and talk about PS Plus Premium. So Sony, because no one is really subscribing to Premium, I guess, is running a kind of cool promotion now in celebration of their 30th anniversary, where if you win this sweepstakes, I guess is what you would call it, you'll get 30 months of PS Plus Premium. Now, there are a couple of drawbacks, right? Like, first of all, you have to be subscribed to PS Plus Premium in the first place, so you kind of have to pony up a little bit of money up front to be entered into this giveaway. But because the pool of people who have Premium is so small, I feel like your chances of winning this 30-month subscription to PS Plus Premium are actually much higher than they would be in most cases. So here's what you have to do to actually qualify. So like I mentioned, you have to subscribe to PlayStation Plus Premium. I would just do a month. And then the next thing you have to do is download a game from the Classics catalog and play it. And once you do that, it'll sync up your PlayStation Network account to the overall list, and then you'll be entered in the giveaway to potentially win 30 months of PS Plus Premium. Now, I think this is cool, right? Like, obviously there's only going to be a few people who actually win, but it encourages people to go play older games. And to celebrate the achievement, Sony has also added the third Sly game to the PS Plus Premium catalog. So you can play the entire Sly trilogy now if you have PS Plus Premium. And on top of that, you can just buy these games individually. So even if you don't want to enter the giveaway, you don't want to subscribe to PS Plus Premium, you get the benefits of them adding these games to the service, which is great for everyone as a whole. I really wish they would lower the prices back to what they were. I get it, like, you know, Xbox is charging a lot more money now for Game Pass Ultimate than they did back when they introduced it. Inflation has made the dollar less valuable. They need to make sure they keep the costs in line with how much they're spending to get these games on the service in the first place. There's a lot of stuff on the back end that you kind of have to think about, but I also don't have to care about that. Like, at the end of the day, I want an experience that feels like it's worth it. And considering how expensive PS Plus Extra and Premium are, and also comparing that to the fact that Xbox gets big games on Game Pass day one, like Indiana Jones, which is getting rave reviews. It is coming to PS5 later on. They get those games day one for free with their Game Pass Ultimate subscription. I feel like Sony needs to do a little more legwork to make this service feel a little more worth it, like maybe giving you a checklist of games from the subscription every month that you can select from as games you want to keep. Like, say, hey, you know, there's like 1,000 or so games in PS Plus Extra. Here's a coupon that you can use once a month to pick one game from the catalog to just keep forever. You know, I feel like they could make money that way if people are continuing to stay subscribed. And why wouldn't you if you knew you were going to get a free game at the end of every month that you could keep forever? I mean, there's a ton of different ways they can make it more valuable. I just think they need to put in the legwork to do that. But yeah, if you've got PS Plus Premium, you should definitely go download one of these classic games and just play it for 5 minutes, even if you don't want to get totally into the whole experience, because then you have a great chance of winning 30 months of PS Plus Premium that you don't have to pay for. And then you can try out the bad game streaming for PS3 games that looks and runs really bad. Or you can go back into PlayStation history and play some classics like Resident Evil Director's Cut and Dino Crisis, which are 2 great games. Anyway, that brings me to the second news story here, which is a really interesting one. Basically, we want PS3 games to be natively playable on the PlayStation 5. That is not news. That is what people have been begging for. We heard news earlier this year that apparently Sony was investigating a way to figure that out, but here we are, it's almost 2025 and we have nothing from Sony on whether or not we're going to ever be able to play PS3 games on the PlayStation 5. So yeah, of course, whenever you complain about a feature that you want that should have been there in the PS4 generation, but for some reason hasn't made it into the PS5 generation, there are people who would just refuse to accept any criticism of the console they bought, and they say, well, the PS5 is not technically powerful enough to actually run PS3 games. And now it has been proven that it is more than powerful enough to run PS3 games. And this is a really weird roundabout way that this happened. So a YouTuber bought a chip that was for a mining rig, and then they built their own little rig with it. And it turns out that chip is the exact same AMD chip that runs the PlayStation 5. Now, he had to go through a lot of legwork to get it up and running with Windows and Linux, and it's still running in the state that he was able to get it up and running in at a much more downclocked speed than what you get out of the PlayStation 5. But of course, this guy was smart and awesome, and he decided to boot up RCPS3 on it. And even with the downclocked nature and the fact that he cobbled together a PC from the chip that runs a PlayStation 5 console, it was doing just fine with big games like GT5 Prologue and Little Big Planet. Not only was it running it at the resolution that it originally ran them in, like 720p, it was running them at higher frame rates and higher resolutions of up to 1080p, and you could really theoretically push the graphics to 4K. So that kind of puts the whole thing to bed on whether or not the regular PS5 is powerful enough to run PS3 games, because a version of it that's running less powerfully than the current PS5 is right now was able to run PlayStation 3 games. And that makes my demand for Sony to actually get their shit together and figure this out much more reasonable than I previously thought it was. Like, usually when I complain, I guess, or ask for features that should have been there 2 generations ago, I feel a little bad because, you know, I don't know how hard it is to actually get an emulator up and running on a PlayStation 5, but then someone like this comes around and does it themselves and goes through the trials and tribulations that are required to get a PS5 chip up and running as a regular computer, and I see that it can be done by someone in their house. So Sony, a company paying a whole ass engineering team to develop consoles that they can then charge $700 for, it should be nothing for them. They should be able to figure this out in hours versus days, months, or weeks. They have acknowledged lately that the PS5 is in the back half of its life cycle, which in my opinion is the perfect time to start going back and checking off some of the features that people have been begging for that you haven't addressed yet, like a web browser, like a PS3 emulator, like themes. We're almost there on themes. People have been begging Sony to keep around the 30th anniversary themes, and of course they have not said anything, and I highly doubt they will. But if they want to kind of improve the way people think about them on the outside, like, I love PlayStation, I'm a huge fanboy, but you know, in the general public, they're starting to wane just a little bit because of all the weird practices and the cost of the PS5 and PS5 Pro. I mean, you can do these little easy wins, like getting the themes to be able to stick around, add more themes, add a web browser instead of having to go through a weird whole process on the back end to actually use it because it's already on the console, or at the very least, get PS3 emulation up and running on the PlayStation 5. I don't feel like it's all that hard. All right, guys, let's jump into the third news story. I'm back with my thoughts on the Game Awards. A few games stood out to me. I think the spread this year was pretty good, like compared to past years. I mean, it's not like a high bar to clear because the Game Awards are never really that good, but I had fun watching it with my friends, and a few games stood out as things I'm actually excited for. This is crazy. Of course, we got to start out with the new game from Naughty Dog, Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. This closed out the show. We finally know more about yet another first-party game from Sony. Neil Druckmann says that this has been in the works since 2020, and apparently people have found in the trailer that there's like a 2027 date listed in there. I hope it doesn't take that long, just knowing it's been in development for over, 4 years at this point. I hope they kind of can shorten it down, maybe release it in 2025, 2026 at the latest. Like, if they start releasing all these games like Ghost of Yotei and this one like way late, 2026, 2027, we're going like a whole generation without any actual PS5 games, and then we're on a back foot going into the PS6 generation. So I hope it's sooner than 2027. Naughty Dog's made some of my favorite games ever. The Uncharted trilogy is perfect in my opinion. I started out gaming with Crash Bandicoot, so like they're very near and dear to my heart. I love The Last of Us Part 1. I like The Last of Us Part 2. I like it less and less as I get farther and farther away from it. There's stuff I really like in this trailer. There's other stuff that I'm like whatever on. I want to know more about the story, of course, before I pass judgment on it, but like we've seen so many bounty hunter stories over the past few years. I think Naughty Dog will put a good twist on it, but we just got to wait and see. The product placement is really making people mad for some reason. The Adidas shoes, the Sony tape deck, of course, the Porsche spaceship. This is obviously a callback to Alien. Like, this game is very 80s inspired. The whole log line that they gave said like it takes place in a world where the 80s saw space travel become, a commoditized thing. I don't necessarily think that the product placement itself is bad. I think think the game is too clean and HD. Like they need to dirt it up with like a film grain or like a noise filter or something like that to give it that rough edge look that Alien has. Like everything is from the 80s in this game, but everything also looks brand new. And I feel like that's why it's tonally clashing. But if they're from a future where space travel has been commoditized to the point where like it's a thing, like a car that you buy, like Porsche would be making a spaceship. And I think that Porsche spaceship looks awesome. So yeah, I am excited for this. I think the criticism of the product placement is fair, but you know, it's a couple years out, and I think they just need to, you know, dirt it up a bit, make it a little bit grimy and give it that Alien aesthetic if you're already pulling so much from Alien, where Sigourney Weaver's running around in classic Reebok high tops. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I don't want to call it gameplay because it wasn't gameplay, but there was a brief glimpse at the combat. It's all melee focused, which I think is really cool. That laser sword looks sweet to me. It's basically a ripoff of the chain sword from Space Marine 2 or, you know, Warhammer 40K as a whole, but it's like electrified version of it, I guess. I think it looks sweet. I liked her jump move off of the rock. The robot looked cool as well. I'm glad they're going back to like more of a fun aesthetic after the dourness of The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. Like I was reading some tweets from people at Naughty Dog, and it seems like they're all excited to be working on this game, which is what I want to see more of. You know, people making games that are actually excited to make games. It's very rare these days. Either way, the game that stood out the most to me though, the one I'm most excited for, is Mafia: The Old Country. This looks phenomenal, man. Like it just looks so damn good. They did confirm that they're pulling back from the like pseudo open world of the first two Mafia games, and that this is going to be a linear game, which I think is smart since the open world aspects of all three previous Mafia games were like the worst part of it. The story setup looks just perfect. Set in 1915, you're joining the Mafia. You're like a teenager who worked in the sulfur mine and is looking for a better life. That's just a perfect setup for the story. Voice acting looked incredible. The stiletto knives just looked awesome. The revolvers, just the car, everything about the world it takes place in. I want to be in that world. I do not want to wait for summer next year to actually play this. I think this is going to be a great game. I'm really excited for it. I think my second most hyped game is going to surprise you. It's Project Century. I've never played a Yakuza game. My two friends, George and Grayson, they love these games, and my friend Jake from Game Ranks, he really likes them too. They're just long, and I've never really had time to get into them, but you know, this game looks like sweet, man. Like just all the flags, the people walking around, the fact that it's set earlier in history, the blood, the violence, and just like it's another game kind of like Mafia, and I guess kind of like Intergalactic, I can't really tell, but for sure Mafia, where it's people that are excited to be making this game. Like you can see it on the screen that they're pouring time and energy into getting everything right with the details and everything like that. It just looks so rich and like just awesome. Capcom's back with a new Onimusha game. If you don't know what this is, it's like a ninja series that was kind of inspired by Resident Evil. Like it had the, you know, the camera angle switching like between rooms. They remastered one of them pretty recently just to like test the waters, and I guess it sold well enough because here we are with a new Onimusha game. My friends all thought this was Sekiro or a new Neo or maybe like Rise of the Ronin coming to PC because of the red floating orbs, but this looks sweet. Super dark, super gory, like some cool effects on the monsters with all the Japanese flags and everything. I just thought it looked awesome. I'm really excited for it. I didn't add it to my list, so I forget the subtitle, but that new Elden Ring game looks awesome. Nobody's talking about it for some reason, but like it looks sweet. Apparently it's a survival extraction game where it's 3-player co-op. It's set in the lands between, but I saw the maiden from Dark Souls 2 in there and like bosses from Dark Souls 1. They're kind of just merging all the Dark Souls games together, and I guess the goal is to survive for 3 days on the map and get through some randomized dungeons and fight some randomized bosses. I think it's cool that they're kind of branching out and building out their multiplayer suite. This is probably something that they've been working on for the past couple of years, and you know, it's a cool little spin-off. It's not the next big game from Software, but you know, Elden Ring's huge, and ironically it's coming out at the same time as the Horizon multiplayer game. Horizon just can't catch a break, man. It's crazy. Like first Zelda, then Elden Ring, and now a new Elden Ring game with the multiplayer game. It's like they just picked the worst release times for those games. And finally, Astrobot winning Game of the Year. That was awesome. I loved Astrobot. It's a great first party game that sold pretty well, and it's a great celebration of gaming, and it kind of fits in with what I was saying about Project Century and of course Mafia: The Old Country, where it's like a game that people who are working on it were clearly excited to just make a good game. There's no microtransactions, there's no live service aspects, There's none of this bullshit that just clogs up games and makes them feel more like checklists to be time sinks than just products to have fun with and be entertained. Like, I don't know. I'm just really excited about all these games kind of getting the spotlight again because I'm just sick of the slop, man. I don't know. But yeah, solid showing from the Game Awards. I thought it was a great time. I had fun on Discord with my friends watching it. I'm glad there was no hardware, so I didn't have to jump off and make a video. Yeah, I hope you guys had fun watching it too. Let me know what you're excited for down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.